My labral tear journey began in 2011. It started with back and hip pain in the gym, and that pain persisted and led me down a rabbit hole of medical appointments, research, and uncertainty. Over 5 years, I saw over 30 specialists and spent over $26,000 trying to heal my hips. Fortunately, I ultimately did fix my hips without surgery. 14 years later, I have no pain or movement problems whatsoever. But guess what? I still have the labral tear and bony abnormalities in my hip. Like me, many of you are wondering about your hip labral tears and the scary prospect of surgery. Is surgery right? Is it wrong? Will it prevent or cause more problems down the road? These are some of the same questions I grappled with. This video aims to guide you in decoding the mystery of hip labral tears and surgery. It sheds light on what the science says and what you can do to feel better now. This is Hip Labral Tears Decoded. So imagine a rubbery ring cushioning your hip joint. That's the labrum. When it tears, it can theoretically cause discomfort and a range of symptoms. But here's the confusing thing. Tears don't always cause pain or problems. One of the main ways people discover that they have a hip labral tear is with a seemingly advanced or sophisticated medical imaging tool called the MRI. While these machines like MRI and MRA give us some information, they're not circles of certainty or donuts of truth. For example, many studies have shown little to no correlation between labral tear seen on an MRI and pain or disability. In one pioneering study, researchers studied people with asymptomatic hips, meaning their hips had no problems or pain. The scientists wanted to examine the relationship between hip labral tears and hip pain. To their surprise, they found that the majority, 73% of the subjects, had some abnormality or labral tear, but no pain or problem. In another study in 2019 titled "Acetabular labral tears are common in asymptomatic contralateral hips with femoral acetabular impingement," the authors discovered that 43% of people with no hip pain or hip problems had labral tears in that hip. In the author's own words, "We suggest that the decision to perform labral surgery in patients with FAI should be made cautiously considering the relatively high prevalence of labral tears in asymptomatic hips and the low chance of development of symptoms." These studies show that 43 to 73% of the people in the studies had bony abnormalities and labral tears on an MRI, but no problems. The bottom line is this: MRIs are not circles of certainty and not donuts of truth. Okay, so now you understand that bad results on an MRI don't necessarily mean that that is the source of your pain. However, some of you may still pray that the surgery will be the magic wand to fix everything. And after all, doctors dangle these surgeries in front of us, and the lure of the quick fix is really enticing. But what is fixed? And does fixed mean the same thing to the doctor as it does for you or for me? For me, fixed means I feel good again and I can return to my normal activities, period. But for the surgeons, success is often defined as an arbitrary 20-point increase on a questionnaire, or "Your MRI results showed positive results. I know you're still in pain, but we're calling the surgery a success." Given these dubious definitions of fixed or success, I'd think long and hard before letting a surgeon cut me open and start stitching things together willy-nilly. With that said, let's look at the science of labral tear surgery success rates. One of the most popular treatments for hip labral tears in the last decade has been labral debridement, or labrectomy, in which a surgeon goes into your hip and cuts away the loose bits of your labrum. It seems you've got some loose bits hanging off of your labrum. I think it might be a good idea to cut the rest of it off. Unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, removing pieces of the labrum doesn't seem to help. It actually increases instability. So it's not surprising that a study on the results of labrectomy cited poor results for debridements and for the labrectomies. In the author's own words, isolated arthroscopic labral debridement for hip labral tears had 45% combined poor results when strictly defining failure as a repeat surgery or abnormal hip rating. In plain English, labral debridement gave bad results for about half the people, and many were recommended another surgery when the first one failed. Well, it's like my mother used to say, when you fail, try again. And this actually reminds me of a personal story my friend told me literally 2 days ago. He's a young guy my age on his 5th hip surgery. First, he tried microfracture surgery. Then when that didn't work, he tried arthroscopy. Then, when that didn't work, they gave him a double hip replacement on both legs. His conclusion was, Shane, avoid surgery for as long as possible and only get it if absolutely necessary. And this is someone who's been through 5 surgeries. The other surgical option for a labral tear is refixation, where the damaged labrum pieces are reattached. There's some evidence that refixation may be better than debridement or labrectomy. In other words, stapling it back on may be better than cutting it off. However, the authors were uncertain whether the reported improvements resulted from surgery or not. The last surgical option to treat your hip labral tear is arthroscopic hip surgery. Yes, the same one that my friend got that failed. Doctors perform this surgery if you have abnormal bone shapes like cam, pincher, or mixed morphology. These are often called the bone shapes of femoral acetabular impingement, or FAI. The goal of this FAI surgery is to correct the bony abnormalities that theoretically cause the labrum to tear. This is accomplished by shaving your bones and cutting or stitching up your labrum. Unfortunately, we already learned that many people with hip labral tears don't have hip pain, and the same is true for people who have FAI bone shapes. I covered this point in detail in my bone-on-bone hip pain and FAI and arthritis videos. The summary of labral tear surgery success rates is this. The doctor's definition of success and your definition of success might be wildly different. So proceed with caution. Studies show that labral tears and bad bone shapes aren't necessarily the source of your pain. So think more holistically. The success rates for these surgeries are disappointing and they can vary widely. But what else? What else should we consider if we're trying to understand whether surgery is appropriate for us? How about the experience of other people who already had the surgery? The cool thing about the internet is people get surgery and then they blog about it. This is helpful because they share all their experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I actually hunted down a few of these blogs and will summarize the results here. One blog is Stephanie's experience 1 year after getting surgery for a hip labral tear. Here are a few highlights. Did the surgery work? Yes and no. It's hard to blanket say the surgery was great and life-changing because honestly, there have been struggles, pain, and setbacks. She goes on to say, I'm still dealing with the residual tightness 1 year after surgery. And I'm experiencing sharp hip pain at random. Not sure if it's muscular tightness, something pinching inside the joint again, or arthritis, but it is concerning to have gone through this process and still have sharp pain. Another blog is about Sarah Jane's experience 1 year after getting surgery for a hip labral tear. She says, I have noticed that my surgery hip gets tighter much easier when I do glute exercises and stuff, so I have to keep working on the knots in the hip. The aching in my hip joint if I sit too much has improved, but I'm still quite tight in my inner thigh muscles. I have some adhesions and things I need to keep working on from surgery. I still have discomfort when I try to do a knee to chest stretch with that hip. So I'm not sure if that will always be there or if I just need to keep working on improving that mobility somehow. I guess I need to ask the nurse about something at my surgeon's office. And finally, we have Annette's experience 1 to 2 years after getting surgery for a hip labral tear. In her own words, 11 months in, I got another cortisone injection. Like the first injection I had gotten before the surgery, it just upset my hip joint even more. I could not sit without pain until 14 months post-op. Would I do the surgery again? Honestly, I don't know. Speaking personally, as someone who has a hip labral tear but decided not to get surgery, I'm struck by a crucial pattern when I read these stories. The pattern is, none of these people seem to be jumping with joy and singing the praises of surgery. At best, they say, well, I guess I had to get it because it probably would have gotten worse if I didn't. It's not exactly a glowing review of surgery. And of course, this isn't to say that surgery is never warranted for anyone at any time, but it does make you think long and hard about whether you fully maxed out the non-surgical options before going for the last resort. On the flip side, here are 2 other stories about how people overcame hip labral tears without surgery, so that you can see that there is hope.
You seriously changed my life. 5 years ago, I felt like an old lady. My hip was completely locked up. Even driving the car was miserable. I had no answers from doctors. They wanted to operate on me and I seriously considered it. And then I just started thinking be non-weight bearing for 6 months. So being off my feet, it wasn't really an option for me. And then I found you and I started spending just hours doing your, FAI Fix program every day. And, it took me at least 6 months to see a breakthrough really in my hip, to see more mobility. But once I started seeing it, I craved it. And I do that every day now. And it just a pain-free life.
I remember getting to a point where I started to notice, particularly my right hip, which is the one that had the labral tear and would click. I started to get that catching pain, that like textbook symptom of the labral tear. It was real shit because it would catch. I just wouldn't be able to move. I would have to wait until I would be able to like fire the muscles in my hip again. I just remember thinking, oh, what am I going to do? And obviously the first thing you see is surgery. And it's really daunting because you look at the outcomes of surgery and it doesn't seem to be that good. I ended up thankfully stumbling across your YouTube channel. Started off with very basic myofascial release and then going into mobility work, a lot of static stretching, trying to relax, loaded progressive stretching, and eventually the pain started to go away. The range of motion started to improve, as you described with your system, which is really awesome. This is something that I've told so many people passing by in conversation who talk about hip pain. They kind of don't realize how legitimate it actually is, which is a shame. Right. But my hips now are totally fine. Actually, the other day I compiled a playlist for someone of your videos to watch.
The summary on hip labral tears and surgery is this. Hip labral tear surgeries are not a slam dunk home run. They don't guarantee success, and the people who get them seem to be kind of meh about the results. If you're thinking of getting one, let it be your last option. There is another option beyond surgery and beyond traditional physical therapy. It's called the TRS method. I developed this method by struggling with my own FAI, my labral tear and my bone cysts, and it's been working for thousands of people worldwide since 2015. This science-backed approach has produced hundreds of success stories since we started. You can watch dozens and dozens of real stories from real people on our website. If you want to heal your hips and get your life back without surgery, check out vfaifix.com for our do-it-yourself hip program, which is powered by the TSR system. And if you want personalized one-on-one help implementing the TSR system, book a free one-on-one call with me at gotrom.com/VIP to see if you qualify for our VIP mentorship program. I hope this video has decoded the mystery of surgery for hip labral tears. And as always, please remember, you're just one step away from building or rebuilding your perfect body. Can you tell that I'm not a real doctor because I don't know how to hold this stethoscope? Yeah. So it's like this? Oh yeah.
I like this picture.
People are gonna point that out on YouTube. They're like, that's not how you wear a stethoscope. I'm checking your heart rate and it's good, so your hip is fixed.